welcome to the Harbor Fund podcast. We're so thrilled to have our dear friend David Oyelowo on today. He's a British Nigerian actor, producer, and theatrical extraordinaire performer. You have very unlikely met a more talented human being. It's such a joy to have met David in this last year and to spend some time with him. We've had some fun adventures and many more to come.
Yeah.
Many of you may know him most notably for his incredible portrayal of Dr. Martin Luther King in Selma. And his most recent television show that's out is called Government Cheese on Apple, which is just so unbelievably aesthetically, surprisingly beautiful. Like, there's so much artistic license you guys have taken.
Yeah.
There's so much incredible work, but he also is a Shakespeare alumni. I mean, we're talking major high theater, and which is probably the most delicious thing about your career to me, because I find that stuff so unbelievably powerful, because it takes us back into more of the most archaic forms of this art form that just really are stunning. We've lost a lot of that today with our fancy, studio, superhero productions and a lot of visual effects. So, I mean, that's just straight storytelling on a stage, monologues,
Yeah, well, it's timeless. I think the reason why Shakespeare is still relevant today is because, unlike almost any other playwright or storyteller in history, he just tapped into the human spirit in a way that I just don't know there's another playwright or storyteller who has. And, I recently played Coriolanus, for instance, at the National Theatre last year in London. And, there were lines being said that felt like they had been written that day in relation to what was happening in the news. I mean, for work that was written 400 years ago, that's pretty extraordinary.
400 years. I mean, and this is a great segue into my first kind of question for you, David, is, and thank you for being here. He's a friend
Pleasure.
and ambassador to us at Harbor Fund, and we're working all kinds of fun projects together. But what is it about film and creative work that because you've utilized it so much for social causes that you're passionate about. So tell us a little about why film, why acting, why this medium to make a difference in the world? Because you have so many talents, you could be doing so many things.
Well, I mean, unlike a lot of people who end up as actors, it wasn't something that I was thinking I was going to do when I was younger. I was born to Nigerian parents who valued academia over artistic expression, and, being a good boy, I was very much on that track. But, I fell in love with story because of my fascination with human beings. And I very quickly became very enamored with holding up a mirror to human beings, reflecting back to them what I see in them, the good, the bad, and the ugly. But that was very much as a hobby. So I did youth theater, and I took drama at school. But then I had this great teacher who encouraged me to think about doing it professionally, and I ended up going to drama school. And since I became a professional actor, the thing I couldn't have anticipated is the cultural impact of the work I've been afforded the opportunity to do. One of my first jobs was playing Henry VI at the Royal Shakespeare Company.
Wow.
And I was the first Black actor ever to do that in a major production in the UK. And I never thought of myself as someone who was going to break new ground. I just wanted to tell stories and get paid for doing what I love. And then so many things that I was afforded the opportunity to do broke barriers culturally, but then also spoke to people in ways that I could see the potency and the power of story to shift culture, to shift mindsets, to unlock people from places that they were stuck. And that became a real driver for me. And that's why I actually segued into producing, because, I also realized that if I waited for people to make things I aspired to be in, I would be waiting for a very long time, because the things that I was gravitating towards tended to be things that hadn't been done before. And so I think it's the cultural impact of storytelling that has become the driver for me now.
That's so beautiful. And it's cool because Yorba Saxon Productions, which is your production company, you've partnered with your stunning and incredible wife, Jessica, who also is an artist, an actor, and an incredible talent on her own right. And you guys have these beautiful children that you've been raising. And she's talked a lot about, the the power of being able to like step in and be involved in this way in your career when there was a moment where she stepped back to raise a family and support you.
Yeah.
Can you speak a little bit about that dynamic of starting your production, Saxon Productions, and like where you guys are headed with that, and how long it's been operating, kind of where you're headed? I'd love you to talk about Mansa as well.
Yeah.
And which is your new disruptive way to get the content out there once it's made. So I mean,
Yeah.
you're kind of like soup to nuts. You're acting, directing, producing, and now distribution.
Yeah, and distribution. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, to start with Yoruba Saxon, the company I have with my wife Jess, we've had that for over 10 years. The company was born out of necessity rather than something that we absolutely felt the need to do, because we needed a mechanism for making the things that we wanted to make. And Yoruba Saxon, I'm of the Yoruba tribe in Nigeria. She's Anglo-Saxon. We felt that reflected the fact that we think of ourselves as global citizens. We want to tell specific stories universally to a global audience. And for her as a woman, for me as a person of color, the reality is that our stories have traditionally been marginalized, being of those demographics. And so I truly believe that the way for story to have cultural impact is to see all sides of humanity, not primarily one demographic, which tends to a lot of the time be white middle class men. And they tell great stories, and we've all grown up with those stories, but there's so much more to explore. And that's what Yoruba Saxon is set up to do, and that's what we've been doing. And Mansa, the streaming platform that I co-founded with Nate Parker, is also born out of necessity. Nate has made extraordinary films like Birth of a Nation, American Skin. I directed a film called The Waterman, and what happens is you make these films, you lovingly put together the money, you lovingly make the film, and then you hand it over to someone who doesn't have the same level of connection or passion about the project, and it's like having a baby and then instantaneously giving it to someone else and saying, please look after them.
Wow.
And that, more often than not, sometimes they look after it well, but a lot of the times they don't. And a lot of the times, if there's any benefit, from a financial standpoint, they're making way more than you, the artist, are. And so we wanted to create a platform where there was a rev-share model whereby artists can actually participate in the remuneration that comes from what they make, and a platform that also really is engaged with platforming artists who are marginalized elsewhere.
Incredible. So how can artists essentially approach Mansa? Like, is it something as an open call? Are you guys going and curating the content?
If they go to mansa.com, we're very, very accessible. You can DM us on our IG page and things like that. And we're looking to partner with people who are looking to be disruptive, people who are platform agnostic. We're looking at long form, short form podcasts, user generated content. Because that's where the puck is going. People, I look at my kids and they are very much outside of what I had growing up, an hour and a half to 2 hour movie or episodic television that a new episode airs every week. That is just not their understanding at all. And so, it's a kind of an adapt or die approach that we're taking, which is to meet the audience where they're at, both the creatives and the audience themselves, the global audience.
I mean, this endeavor and your production company and films at large are so entrepreneurial. Like, where did you gain the grit? Because a lot of talent don't move into, well, I'm going to make my own stories and then I'm going to make sure it gets seen. I mean, the holistic nature of your approach to try to have the impact you want. Like, where did you kind of first glean or get insights to become the entrepreneur that you are?
It's out of necessity. I didn't go to business school or anything like that. Yourself as a parent, nothing can quite prepare you for being a parent, but you have to learn very quickly. And some people are more successful than others. And I think it's, you get in you get out what you put in. And for me, being a producer, being entrepreneurial, it's tied to the passion I have for storytelling. It's tied to the impact and the godly calling I feel to tell stories. And so I feel like that's something I have to steward,
Yeah.
and there are real gaps in my knowledge that I've had to kind of fill. And then there are things that come more naturally to me. You know, running a tech company does not come naturally to me at all. But you know, the byproduct of running a tech company is something that I'm very passionate about. So, you know, Nate and I have spent 3-4 years really just filling up all of our weaknesses with strengths, and bolstering the strengths we already had. You know, even producing wasn't something I really thought about doing. You know, on Selma, the film that you mentioned earlier, I felt called of God to play that role. And then for 7 years, every day I would do something to kind of move the needle to get that film made. And then the film got made, I went, oh, that's producing. I can do that again. And so I've just done it several times now, both in TV and film. And so, you know, it's a skill that's been born out of necessity.
Amazing. And speaking of like your role in Selma and the divine calling, I mean, your wife, we did a fundraising event at Necker Island with Sir Richard Branson for Harbor Fund. It was our first Harbor Film Festival. We're doing our second one in Montana this fall. And it was really stunning because we were able to do a screening of the documentary that your wife made of the journey of you getting this role.
Yeah.
Can you share with people because I think if anybody has seen your incredible, excellent performance and loved the movie Selma, which was just absolutely historically successful, you know, if they want to know the behind the scenes, I mean, it's so incredible that it was your wife with just a camera. Can you share a little bit about that film, where they can watch it? Because I think it'll really help people know your heart, like anyone who might be interested.
Yeah, it's a pretty comprehensive deep dive
amazing.
into who I am. The first thing to say is I was so reluctant for her to make this documentary, partly because my process as an actor is quite vulnerable and private. But she felt very strongly that this journey I was on to playing Dr. King is something that needed to be documented. And we didn't quite know why, but you know, we know what that feeling is when you're feeling a calling to something. And because she's the person I trust the most in the world, I conceded to it. And so it's called Becoming King. It's on Paramount Plus, and it charts that very turbulent journey. It was a time within which my mum had a brain aneurysm just 2 months before we started shooting, and was in a vegetative state the whole time, and all tough. The ups and downs of trying to get the film made, but ultimately, I think why I'm so glad she actually documented it is what we've seen is it's given a lot of creatives hope, because this is very, very tough. You know, I say to young people who ask me about, you know, whether or not they should be an actor, I say, do it only if it's the only thing in the world you want to do. Because if there's almost anything else you want to do that instead, because it will almost definitely be easier than trying to be in this very subjective, insecurity and rejection laden path that is being an artist, let alone being an actor. So but yeah, you know, Jess beautifully documented that, and like I say, I was reluctant at first, but I'm very glad she did.
It is so stunning. There's a particular scene where you just break down really emotionally, and you're feeling the weight of having finally had this come to fruition, getting the role that is going to be real.
Yeah.
And you have your son, actually, like I think, is it both of your sons? You have a couple sons.
Yeah,
in the
I
room.
have 3 sons and a daughter, and it's Caleb, my second son.
Yes, and he's just so touched, and you're like, and he's concerned for your well-being, and then you're like, this is just taking me so many years, sweetheart. Like you're trying to comfort him while processing the big emotion. Being that you have like a beautiful little family, and they've been through this meteoric success, you know, but they've been a part of the struggles. And I think sometimes people, when they look at Hollywood from the outside, you see somebody with your accolades, and they're like, oh, well, he's made it, which you have on every I guess indicator you can in like the public sphere. You've made it, you've arrived, but it's still a struggle. You're still growing, you're still raising capital for your distribution, you're still finding capital for your projects, what we're going to talk about in a minute. It's like always something new on deck. Like you never really arrive, it feels like, I think.
And you don't. And that's why I say only do it if it's the only thing you want to do, because no matter how successful you get, there's someone somewhere who's not going to like your work, whether it's the critics or you're aging out of the roles you used to play, or you know, the audience they've gone for a younger version of you, whatever it is, that's baked in. for me, you mentioned my family. The greatest success of my life is my family.
Amazing.
I think as an actor, to be able to make a living exclusively as an actor, you have won. I mean, you are
Yes.
like in 5% of actors
Wow.
to be able to actually exclusively earn your living doing that, which has been the case for me in the
Unbelievable.
27 years I've been an actor. But, my wife, my 4 kids, the fact that, we have a beautiful marriage, we have these children who are whole and healthy and good human beings, that to me is what success actually looks like.
Yes.
I'm surrounded by a lot of very worldly successful people whose lives are quite broken and messy and I wouldn't want that. I
Right.
sleep well at night because I have the
Yes.
things that matter to me most, which is my family, my faith, are close. It's funny, Caleb, who you just mentioned, who was, gosh, how old was he in that moment? He's 20 now, so he's probably 6 or 7. He's now at the same drama school I went to.
No way.
At the
How
same age.
charming.
Yeah, so he's home at the moment, but he's literally about to go back to London to start his 3rd year of drama school
Incredible.
in the very school I went to. So it's funny. He was the one in that scene, as you say, asking me, "How long have you been working on this film?" And I say 7 years, and he goes, "Oh, that's a long time."
It's as old as I've been around.
Yeah, exactly. And now he's on this journey, and I find myself so nervous for him
Oh, bless.
because of the bumpy road that I know it is. But
Yes.
he fulfills that remit, which is it's the only thing he wants to do.
How cool.
He's putting in the time to have a
Yes.
craft. He's
Yes.
going to put in 3 years of training, and I think that puts you also in the top 5% if you put that level of dedication into it.
Yes. And I mean, how beautiful, because he knows what he's signing up for. He's not
Yeah.
he's going in eyes wide open, because it's like both of my parents have done this. He's seen both of
Right.
your careers. He's seen the highs and the lows.
Yeah.
There's a
Yeah.
sobering choice that he's making. He's
It
not
is.
naive.
It is, but there's nothing can actually quite prepare you for the roller coaster that it is. Drama school does a pretty good job, but suddenly being self-employed, suddenly
Oh,
being the
yes.
CEO of your own company, which
Yes.
is your
Yes.
bodily frame. That's your
Yeah, it's a great
business.
point.
And
Yeah,
and
your
you're
brand.
working on it all the time.
Yeah.
You're working on your mind to make sure you have knowledge. You're observing people to make sure you that's what you are here to do, is to represent humanity back to humanity.
Wow.
You are, staying healthy. You are understanding taxes. You are understanding what it is to be self-employed. You are understanding how to be social, even if you're an anti-social person, because it's a
Yes.
social business.
Yes.
So there are so many facets to it that it's not until you're thrown into the deep end that you really learn if you're built for it, or to the degree that you're built for it. There are some people who settle into just being a voice actor, or settle just into being a theater actor, or are movies and not theater, or are television. But those who can do it all are very rare.
Yeah.
And I think they are people who work on themselves the most.
Well, and the mental acuity and toughness, I guess, like the discipline
Yeah.
goes into it. But you mentioned your faith and your family, which, to me was one of the yummiest qualities about you when I first met you, and your wife. I was just like, these people, how have they, lived in the proverbial sewer of sometimes this industry and maintain this precious, sacred part of yourselves and your marriage and your unity. And you mentioned, when I think I went to lunch with you for the first time in person, you were sharing with me that you had kind of like some ground rules about acting, how long you're away from your family. Can you share a little bit about that? Because I think it's fascinating. I think it tells a little bit about your character and your willingness to admit that, like, we're all human. And if you don't have these parameters, you might get in trouble.
Yeah, for sure. No, so Jess and I met, we were 17 and 18. We met doing youth theater, and we started dating when she was 19 and I was 21.
It's adorable.
And I was still at drama school, and we had to go on like a European tour while I was still at drama school, and we were apart for 3 weeks, and I felt physically ill for not
Wow.
seeing her for those 3 weeks, and we just decided we weren't even engaged yet, I don't think, but we decided that we would never be apart for more than 2 weeks ever again.
Wow.
And then we went on to be engaged, and we got married, and very naively, because we had no idea what the business actually entails, and we're both actors and going all over the world acting. But we told our agents, we told everyone around us, we are never going to, this is our rule, and we're not going to break it. And people literally laughed at us. Like, our rep said, that's literally impossible. And we'll be celebrating 27 years of marriage in September. And we have only broken it once by 11 hours.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, she was doing a film.
That doesn't count. You feel still you're in
It
the
does
green.
count,
You're
and it's
still
a
in the
very,
good
very
zone.
sore point. She was doing a film, a Tim Burton movie. If I ever see Tim Burton, I'm having words.
You're like,
he
excuse me.
changed the schedule on her, and then the flights had to change. It's like the most upsetting thing. But it's only been once in 27 years, and it was by 11 hours. So I think we can apply some grace.
It's a good part of the story.
But yeah, I think when it comes to relationships, especially in a business that is so all-consuming and overwhelming, you need non-negotiables, because otherwise the business will suck you in and it spits you out. It's not where you find edification as a human being. It's great telling these stories. It's incredibly rewarding. But at the end of your days, it's not going to be how many films you made. It's going to be your family and how you made them feel, and how they made you feel, and that's going to be the thing that's my kids are my legacy. My marriage is my legacy.
Absolutely.
I love the movies I make, and I wouldn't have that any other way. But I also, it's practical. You're on movie sets with some of the most beautiful people on the planet. In incredible locations, and if you don't acknowledge the fact that you're a human being and need to be in proximity of your family in order to be a family, that way madness lies. And that's why you see so much brokenness in my industry when it comes to family. So yeah, that's just one of the non-negotiables we have, and it's served us well.
It's such a beautiful principle, and I like such a great cue. I hope people take from your example in this industry, because a
lot of people have.
We need more families. We need more families to be intact. Right?
I agree, and especially in our business. But yeah, a lot of my friends, a lot of actors who I haven't even met, they've heard about the 2-week rule and
they picked it up,
adopted it, and so I have agents cursing me all over our industry, going, "Yeah, you're the reason why I can't get my actor to
made this
to go
the bane
off and
of
do
my
this
existence."
movie. Yeah, exactly.
I love that. Well, I love that we connected really quickly on our shared faith, and just have gone so deep with you guys about that. And it's been such a treasure to like hear your mind and heart about that stuff, because you articulate your faith so beautifully. But as an artist, your expression of faith is also just kind of just quite frankly entertaining. Like, you're so wonderful at explaining things. We had you on a panel and you were speaking about, why faith matters in culture, why it matters in storytelling, and how, for too long people have been kind of allergic or shunning this part of our personhood and our humanity and our world globally. Can you share a little bit about, specifically when you first met me and learned about Harbor, what it was about Harbor and what we're building that was like, hey, I think this is worth you've so many things you can be getting involved. This is worth my energy, my attention, some of my time. And I think you were sharing some of that was the faith component of like, we're not a faith fund, but we shared a shared vision for what matters.
Yeah, but I think social impact has a real connection to faith, whether it be faith in God or faith in humanity or faith in the human condition being something that can be enhanced through story.
Yeah.
And so for me, that was the connection, the idea that making social impact films can be something you can do in an entertaining way, you can do in conjunction with others through partnership, people who have shared values. And I think it's a real need from the audience. You know, I think we go to the movies or we watch TV shows to see ourselves reflected back to us. And I believe the light shines brightest in the darkness. So I'm not just saying that we should be telling stories that are purely light. I think that they should be steeped in humanity. But I love telling stories that point to the light, that point to hope, that are edifying in a way that makes people lean into the beauty of who we are as people, whilst acknowledging the brutality of what we can sometimes be as well. And you know, when we talked about the kind of films that you guys are aspiring to make or be a part of, they weren't just faith-based movies. They weren't purely Christocentric. They were films that have had huge social impact globally, because they point to what is possible for humanity. And so to look at raising philanthropic dollars, to have people who understand the impact of movies whilst not necessarily being in the movie industry, and finding ways to partner with them, to encourage them that their money can go towards something that they can be proud of, that can outlive them, outlast them, that can almost be something they are passing down to their descendants, because that's the beauty of what film can do. I've been so fortunate to do films like Selma, like Queen of Cartway, you know, films that I have seen have real social impact. The Butler,
incredible,
as well. And so I wanna make more of those, and you guys at Harbour want to do that. And so anytime I find that there's a mutual interest in doing good through film, I'm there.
So, David, you, when I first told you about Harbor Fund, you said, I really hope Hollywood will view this not like starving people grabbing a piece of chicken, but like a future well for all of us to benefit. Can you share a little bit what you could see this being? Because we're leveraging these philanthropic dollars into this venture capital shaped nonprofit. We're the first of its kind. This film fund is then investing in these individual projects, which we're going to talk about some of yours. Any of the returns, the principal, the carry come back in the fund, so it's this perpetual engine for good. What was it about you that was like, I really hope you end up with people who get this in Hollywood and not people that are going to be short-term accounting on any of the effort?
Well, it was twofold for me. You know, I had done 4 films for a wonderful company called Participant, who had made some of the most impactful social impact films over the last couple of decades. And they folded recently, and it was a source of heartbreak for many of us within the filmmaking community. But not long after that, you guys came along. And so for me, the remit of the Harbour Film Fund felt like a real breath of fresh air, felt like a salve, a balm, a life raft, considering the loss of Participant. But what I said to you was that you guys just need to really shore things up in a way whereby people don't perceive the Harbour Fund as dumb money.
Yeah.
Because that is a real thing in Hollywood, whereby, you know, filmmaking is a very attractive thing for almost everyone. You know, everyone is fascinated by film, or wants to, you know, wonder what they would be like if they had been an actor, or want to visit a film set or meet a movie star or what. It's very intoxicating. And so therefore it attracts people who are high net worth individuals, and they can be seduced by people over-promising and under-delivering.
Right.
And for me, I'm always looking to do things that are sustainable. So I don't want a world in which the Harbour Film Fund attracts these high-net-worth individuals who are exploited for their dollars and then spat out, and then they don't feel the need to return because they feel like they've been exploited.
Exactly.
You know, if it's something that is going to be impactful, is going to be something that can be sustainable, then it needs to be something that people feel the ability and the need and the desire to come back to again and again and again. And what I loved about what you said about the Harbour Fund is that it would be regenerative, and we also talked about being very judicious about the projects one picks, and not just, you know, and not just throwing a ton of money at one project, but
Right.
diversifying, putting a bit of money into several projects. Sometimes a film just needs $500,000, and that's the difference between
Yeah.
it getting made or not.
Yeah.
You lose a bit of financing, the whole thing falls apart. And I've seen that you've managed that a few times now with films that it's not. Sometimes the reason it's called dumb money is you have someone who's just going to put $10 million of their money into one film.
Project.
And the reality is, for every 10 films you make, it's probably one or two that pays for the other eight that
That's
didn't
right.
quite do everything
That's
that
right.
you hoped. But you can sustain a business model by being very clever. Anyone who works the markets or has a portfolio will know that you have to bake in losses
Yes.
into the fact that you're ultimately going to win. And that was the Harbour approach.
Yes.
And it felt like, oh, okay, this feels like it can be sustainable. So I feel able to
Yeah.
bring artists or high net worth individuals into this without feeling like, oh gosh, they're going to be exploited.
I appreciate that so much. And that's exactly the heart of it. It was like, how can we create a more elegant structure that isn't just, taking advantage of people that don't understand the industry?
Right.
The diversification just diminishes some of that risk. But more than anything, if there is any loss on a specific project, the person who's been writing the check already knows up front you're never seeing your money back because it's a gift.
Right.
It's a tax deduction. They're patrons of the arts.
Right.
So that's not their expectation, although through the fund and diversifying those investments, the fund itself can be sustainable.
Right,
And
right.
so as a patron, they know that like I'm a part of the sum of its parts.
Absolutely.
And this war chest of good filmmaking capital is available because I participated, even if my specific project didn't see the ROI commercially that I had hoped.
Yeah, and I think the exploitative component will be that if one is consistently making films that aren't good,
Yeah.
and films that no one sees,
Yes.
because the ROI for these folks who are putting tax deductible philanthropic dollars in is that
The impact.
this is something
Yeah.
I can be proud of.
Yeah.
I can point to a film and go, I participated in bringing that to the
Yeah.
world, and look at the impact it's having. That
Yeah.
in and of itself is a return on investment. If that's not
Agreed.
happening, that feels exploitative.
That's
it feels
right.
like I'm just, I might as well pay my taxes. Do you know what I
Exactly.
mean? So it's that
Yeah.
you want to deliver on the promise.
Amazing. And you've been so incredibly generous with us, with your connections, with your time. Tell us a little bit about, because our listeners of this podcast, there's a lot of high net worth people that will be watching this. And if you're interested in film and getting involved in the creative arts, I mean, essentially we're allowing you through the Harbor Fund to become the patrons of these incredible projects and be executive producer or co-executive producer, depending on the level that you come in, pari passu with the terms on that specific film. But you have 2 projects right now, and maybe even more, that we're in discussions about funding and we're finding the right partners for. So you can share a little about either one of those. And
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's a film I've been working on for a while that I'm very passionate about called Another Day. And it's being directed by a wonderful friend of mine called Miss Anne Harriman, who I did a short film with called The After, which is on Netflix. And we were Oscar nominated for that.
That was so beautiful.
Last year. And he's a transcendent filmmaker.
Wow.
And just someone, like me, who's very invested in the human experience and how we can give back to it. And so there's a book by Gary Young called Another Day in the Death of America. And Gary Young is a Black British journalist who was living in Chicago about a decade or so ago. And, people may know Chicago has seen a lot of gun crime. And if you have a kid going to school in Chicago, sometimes they're having to go through metal detectors to get to school and things like that. Really the kind of stuff that you don't want your kid being subjected to. Now, Gary is a British guy who married an African-American lady, and they had a son who was growing up in America in Chicago. And Gary, coming from where I come from in the UK, just couldn't understand why all these guns?
Violence,
Why are young people being subjected to gun violence in a way that I didn't see in the UK? I'm not seeing in Europe. I'm not seeing in almost any other country in the world. And he's a journalist. I actually had been interviewed by him back in the day. And he's a journalist and just made this random decision because he was trying to understand it. And he said he said he was going to pick a day, which he did. He picked a day at random and decided to go to visit the families of 10 young people who had died from gun violence all across America to try and get an understanding of what this is, the impact the impact it's having, and why. And he was doing that in order to be able to have more compassion and understanding as a foreigner for this country in relation to its connection to guns. And so he went and visited all of these parents, all of these family members. And the beautiful thing about the book and what we've tried to capture in the film is he thought he was going to chart and capture how these young kids and young people died. But what he ended up capturing was how they lived. And in capturing how they lived, he gained compassion and real passion for the fact of an understanding for why some people feel the need to have firearms, but how so much of it is avoidable. Like just having a place to lock that gun, or just having education around it. His thing was there should be no guns.
Right.
But what he found is that there's just very little education as to how to handle them, very little knowledge as to why this is happening again and again and again. And the film kind of charts his ability to come back to his son and not be so steeped in fear, but to have a renewed faith in the human condition and these faceless kids and families who are being subjected to this. And it kind of gave him and his wife a peace, despite all of the dysfunction that is allowing for so much gun violence in this country. So it's kind of a fish out of water story. Because when people see me and they haven't heard me speak yet, they assume I'm African American. But the minute I speak, they go, "Oh, okay, you're not from here." And to see, he would visit these families who would instantaneously be like, "Well, of course you understand exactly what this is." And he goes, "Nope, I'm not from here. I have no idea." And so it's a way for the audience to kind of understand what America is, where America is, and where America could possibly go in relation to this problem that we really have, that I'm sure every parent also, no matter which side of the fence you're on about guns, you're like, no one wants that happening to their kid. So that's a film called Another Day. And then there's another film that I'm doing called Eulogy to a Fighter, which is about an over-the-hill boxer who is really struggling with gambling addiction. And he is estranged from his younger brother, who was also a boxer. And he did something to his younger brother when they were younger that he cannot forgive himself for. He was meant to babysit his younger brother's son, and he's so addicted to gambling, he left for the casino. His nephew ends up walking out into the street and almost gets hit by a car. And his brother can't forgive him. His brother's marriage ends up dissolving as a result of it. And this causes an even further downward spiral for this boxer. And then he meets this lady. He stumbles into a Narcotics Anonymous meeting. He's meant to be going to a Gambling Anonymous meeting. And she is on her upward trajectory out of addiction. And through her and her child, he sees a path to healing. And it encourages him to reconnect with his brother. But whilst in the midst of that, he's tied up with loan sharks, who he's in this, cycle of gambling and then borrowing and gambling and borrowing. And so it's all kind of caught up with him. And so in the film, he has a choice to make as to whether he's going to love himself enough in order to heal, or go for that one last fight, and what might be the result of that. So that's a really beautiful redemptive story set in a beloved genre that is boxing. But I feel both of those films, to me, it's exactly what I said about, I truly believe the light shines brightest in the darkness. And those are the stories I want to tell, because I'm not just looking to preach to the choir. I think all of us, if we've lived long enough, know what struggle looks like. But, I think we're all sort of also grasping for hope.
Well, both of these scripts that I've read, they're both total empathy machines. You end up being so much more interested in diminishing the suffering of the characters in the film than you
Yeah.
are about placing blame or even getting really heady and kind of tactical about policy. You want,
Yeah.
which I think is really important. Like we want to build more empathy at scale because the more we empathize, the more creative we can be. If we're open to people's suffering, open to the realities of what we're dealing with for when it comes to societal ills, whether it's addiction, mental health, estrangement from family, grief, all of these things. Violence, obviously, gun violence is such a polarizing subject in our
Yeah.
country, unfortunately.
When it's not understood,
Exactly.
when there's no nuance,
Exactly.
when it's just you're Republican,
Yes.
you're
Gun or no gun, yeah. Constitution or not,
yeah,
like
exactly.
those are not the choices.
This and that's
Yeah.
not. I'm not looking to, in the same way that I'm not particularly invested in doing overt Christian movies. I certainly am not interested in doing political movies, just human ones.
Yes.
And that's what I'm always going to gravitate towards. On Eulogy to a Fighter, we actually have half the funding already from a company called Macro, and we're looking to make that for under $10 million. So,
So there's a chance to come in on this film. And David has had an unbelievable success in commercial returns, actually, on his projects, which is also...
we've never lost money on
That's
our movies.
that's like impossible. Like it's so amazing. Like and the partners you've picked, you've worked with before. These are long-term relationships. You're not shooting in the dark because sometimes that's where it can get dicey. When it's like I don't know the players.
Oh no, I and that's the benefit of having been doing it for a while. That's why I love working with you. Our relationship is new, but we share values in a way that there's trust. And Macro, who are doing Eulogy to a Fighter, I just did Government Cheese with,
which is you got to check out. It's so well done.
Thank you. And then Miss Anne Harriman, who's just a transcendent filmmaker. He's actually the director on both films, because like. I've worked with Ava DuVernay 3 times. When I find people who really know what they're doing, you stick with them.
Yeah.
And so that I think is also where, the returns
That's
come
right.
from. And you're rolling up your sleeve. You go on that marketing tour. You do everything you can to.
The hard work.
For me, return on investment for investors is like number one.
Which is so great. So if you'd like to contact us to be involved in these projects, please do. And know that you can do it from a philanthropic purview or as a traditional investor, whichever. But these projects are truly, they're necessary. They're not just like tangential. To me, I feel so passionate about these stories because at the end of the day, you are one of our kings of culture. We say we work with these kings and queens of culture, but you're a legacy artist. You've proven yourself. But the stories you're telling, I mean, they have incredible impact when you scale them at the level that the reach of your work does. I mean, millions and millions of people see this. It can inspire somebody. Movies, I know for me, like films have utterly changed my life. And we both share a love for this, Jewish rabbi from 2,000 years ago, Jesus, who told stories that we call parables. And, they literally shape those stories he told shape our lives today. We make actual decisions in real time in our lives based on the retention of those stories and the meaning and the lessons that they've instilled in us, our values.
Yeah, they are engines for empathy and they are mirrors to humanity. And we all saw during the pandemic how much we need story. I think we all watched more television than is probably healthy, but we gravitated towards story in order to feel connected to humanity at a time where everything was sort of broken from that point of view. So, it's oxygen to our lungs.
Thank you so much, David, for your friendship, your incredible craft and gift to the world, and just you as a person and a friend. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us on the Harbor Fund podcast. We're so thrilled that you joined us and looking forward to sharing more of our great stories with you. And we're looking forward to getting to know more about your stories too.
Hi, I'm David Oyelowo. I hope you'll enjoy my episode of the Harbor Fund podcast.